Hi, I'm Madeline. For months, I thought my husband was just restless, getting up late, pacing the halls. Then I realized every night, he disappeared into our mom's room. My own daughter told me to stop imagining things. They made me feel crazy and visible. So I set up a hidden camera. And what I saw that night, it didn't just break my heart, it changed everything I believed about family. I don't remember when it started, only that one morning I woke up and everything felt off. My name's Madeline. I'm the youngest of 3 daughters. Grew up in a quiet town out in rural Tennessee where folks don't talk much unless it's polite, and secrets have the lifespan of oak trees. We were raised to smile at the dinner table, even if our guts were churning. And lately, mine had been in knots I couldn't untangle. Jarrett, my husband of 10 years, had started pulling away. Not in big dramatic ways, no fights, no slammed doors. Just distance. He stayed up late more often, claimed he couldn't sleep. Said it was work, stress, back pain, whatever he could string together. His phone, once left on counters and couches, now never left his pocket. He started watching me differently too. Like he was calculating something. Cold and careful. Marriage isn't supposed to feel like walking on glass, but that's exactly what it had become, silent steps, fake smiles, hoping not to bleed. Still, I brushed it off. Maybe we were both just tired. Maybe it was the house, or this place. But deep down, I knew better. What shook me wasn't just Jarrett. It was how he started looking at my mother. It wasn't leering, nothing overt, but it was there. Lingering glances, lingering pauses. Too casual. Too often, like he was looking at something familiar and forbidden at the same time. Mom, Velma, had changed, too. She wouldn't meet my eyes at breakfast anymore. She flinched if I reached for her shoulder. Once, I hugged her goodbye and felt her entire body tense up. I chalked it up to age, or her bad knees, or the colder weather. But that was denial speaking, not reason. One night, I woke up with a jolt. The clock glowed 2:17 a.m. Jarrett's side of the bed was cold. I lay still, holding my breath, listening. Then I heard it, footsteps. Not heavy, careful. A minute later, he walked in from the hallway. Couldn't sleep, he muttered. Just needed some water. But the hallway doesn't lead to the kitchen. It leads only to my mother's room. I swallowed hard, nodded, turned away like I believed him. But I didn't sleep another minute that night. The next morning, I tried to talk to Mom. Casual, easy. Just to check in. She smiled, said she was fine, changed the subject to grocery lists. But her hands trembled when she reached for the sugar jar. This house, we'd moved in to take care of her after Dad passed, was too quiet. Creaking floors, thin walls, no privacy. You could hear the television from the other room, the soft pad of slippers across hardwood. But lately, the silence had weight to it. It pressed on me like wet wool. As a kid, I learned to read a room before I opened my mouth. That skill never left me. So I did what I always did when I couldn't speak, I wrote. I started keeping a journal. Nothing fancy, just notes, timestamps, odd behavior, things said and left unsaid. Was I imagining things? Was I paranoid? Or worse, was I right? 3 nights. That's how long it took before the pattern repeated. 3 nights in a row, Jarrett left the bed. Claimed he needed water. Each time, I laid out a full glass for him before we went to sleep. He never touched it. And Mom, she started locking her bedroom door. Said it was because of rats. We live in a brick rancher with sealed vents and no crawl space. We haven't had a rat in 20 years. Her eyes were sunken, her posture more hunched. She stopped watching TV in the den. Started taking naps during the day. I began documenting everything. Times, excuses, expressions. I was no longer just a wife. I was a witness gathering evidence. If I'm wrong, I thought, I destroy my marriage over a shadow. But if I'm right, and stay quiet, I destroy myself. Then came the night that shattered whatever was left of my denial. I heard voices. Not loud, not clear, just enough. Jarrett's whisper, low and deliberate. Then Mom's voice, trembling, no. Don't. I sat up. Every hair on my neck stood on end. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The hallway outside our bedroom might as well have been a mile long. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel it. That heavy, awful silence that follows something you're not supposed to hear. I wanted to scream, to get up, to confront, but I didn't. Instead, I sat in bed, my fists clenched in the sheets, my heart cracking in slow motion. Shame washed over me, not just for what might be happening, but for letting it go this far without doing something. Sometimes the person you trust most is the one holding the match to your soul. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, staring at the search bar. Then I typed, "How to hide a camera in a bedroom." That was it. No more what ifs. No more pretending. If I was wrong, I'd burn in guilt. If I was right, I'd never look at them the same. The morning after I typed that search into my phone, I went through the motions like a puppet. Poured coffee, washed dishes that were already clean, smiled at Jarrett when he mumbled good morning, pretending my skin didn't crawl. I ordered the camera after lunch, a cheap, nondescript alarm clock with a hidden lens. 2-day shipping. That part felt shameful, like I was doing something dirty, sneaking around in my own house. But the truth? I'd never felt cleaner in my life. What kind of wife spies on her husband? What kind of daughter suspects her mother? Those questions echoed in my head while the sunlight filtered through the kitchen blinds, casting harsh slats of judgment across the table. But then I'd remind myself, truth doesn't destroy families. Lies do. I told myself that over and over again until it stopped stinging. The camera arrived in a plain brown box on a Tuesday. I didn't open it right away. Just stared at it for a while, fingers hovering over the packaging tape. Like breaking that seal would unleash something I couldn't take back. For 2 days, I studied their rhythms. Jarrett left for work at 8, came back around 6. Mom usually worked in her garden or folded laundry in the sunroom, pretending to stay busy. I waited for the right moment, not just logistically, but emotionally. I needed to feel numb enough to go through with it. The moment came Thursday afternoon. Mom was out back pulling weeds. Jarrett wouldn't be home for another hour. I slipped into her bedroom like a ghost. The room smelled like old perfume and lavender sachets. The kind of scent that should feel safe. I placed the camera on her nightstand and ran the cord behind the dresser. The thing looked exactly like a real clock, no blinking lights, no noise. As I worked, I imagined excuses in case she walked in. Just dusting, Mom. Or, your alarm clock was acting up again. But my hands were slick with sweat, my breath shallow. Every floorboard seemed to groan in betrayal. Still, I finished the job. Wiped the nightstand clean. Smoothed the bedspread. If truth kills us, then let it kill cleanly. The waiting nearly drove me insane. Every day felt like I was living underwater, everything muffled, slowed, warped by pressure. Southern summer heat baked the porch boards. Cicadas screamed like sirens. But inside the house, it was too quiet. Too calm. The kind of calm that keeps you alert. I acted normal. Laughed when I had to. Cooked dinner. Washed the same damn plates. But my eyes kept drifting toward that room. Toward the secret ticking away in silence. Jarrett kept his nightly walks. Said he couldn't sleep. Velma stayed quiet, barely touched her food. Sometimes I hovered outside their doors. Listening. Not breathing. Just waiting. I nearly deleted the footage 3 times without watching it. My finger hovered over the file. Because once you open a door like that, there's no closing it. I remembered what my father used to say, don't ask a question unless you're ready for the answer. 3 nights after I installed the camera, I couldn't take it anymore. It was just after 2 a.m. The house was still. My heart wasn't. I slipped out of bed, careful not to disturb Jarrett. He stirred, rolled over. I paused, then moved. In the kitchen, I plugged the camera's memory card into my laptop. Only the screen lit the room, casting shadows across my face like a war film. The first few minutes were nothing. Just Velma sleeping. No movement. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Then, her door creaked open. Jarrett stepped inside. He moved slowly. Not like a thief, more like someone who belonged there. She sat up, startled. He whispered something I couldn't catch. Her voice was barely audible, shaky, scared. No, don't, she said. He kept moving. His hand touched her shoulder. I froze. Completely still. Not blinking. Not crying. Just watching like it wasn't real. Like it was some sick movie. They didn't kiss. They didn't strip. But that wasn't the point. It wasn't the act that broke me. It was how practiced they looked. Like this wasn't new. Like this wasn't the first time. I watched that footage 4 times. Each time hoping I'd misread it. Maybe he was checking on her. Maybe she had a nightmare. Maybe I was twisting something innocent into something grotesque. But I couldn't unsee the way she leaned away from him. Or how calm he looked. My mind played games with me. Tried to write new stories to explain the one I'd just witnessed. But it didn't work. Every viewing chipped away at my denial. Until there was nothing left but the raw, bitter truth. The worst pain isn't the moment your heart breaks, it's the quiet that follows. When there's no screaming, no anger, just the silence. I thought about confronting them that night. Storming into their rooms, demanding answers. But something held me back. There was more. I could feel it in my bones. The footage didn't just show betrayal. It showed routine. I sat there for hours, the laptop still glowing. The house still breathing. And then, I heard it. The door creaked. Jarrett stood in the frame, barely lit by hallway light. His voice was soft, too soft. "Can't sleep again?" I looked up, forcing a smile that tasted like metal. "No, just thinking." And from that night, thinking became my most dangerous habit. The next morning, the air inside the house felt heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I went through my routine just as I always did. Coffee, dishes, the soft creak of the hallway floorboards. But everything was wrong now. Every glance, every sound, every word carried a hidden edge. Jarrett moved around the kitchen like nothing had changed, humming softly, his voice almost too calm. He kissed my cheek before heading out the door, and for the first time, that simple touch made my stomach turn. Mom avoided my eyes when I brought her breakfast. Her hands trembled as she reached for the cup. And when Jarrett came back that evening, he placed his hand on her shoulder, just a moment, just enough, and it was all I could do not to flinch. I realized then that I was the only one awake in a house full of sleepwalkers. Everyone else seemed content to drift through this nightmare with their eyes closed. So I started writing again. The journal had become the only place I could speak without fear of judgment. I filled it with times, gestures, fragments of conversations, small truths trying to find their shape. Sometimes silence screams louder than words. A few days later, while passing the attic stairs, I stopped mid-step. I don't know what drew me up there, maybe the stale air, maybe the sense that I'd missed something years ago. I pulled open a dusty box marked "Family Trips." Inside was an old photo album. The pictures smelled like mildew and old laughter. One caught my eye, a trip to Kentucky Lake when I was 12. Mom was in the background, laughing at something. Jarrett stood beside her. It looked innocent, but something about the photo gnawed at me. My father wasn't there. It had been his trip, or at least that's what I was told back then. I remembered that summer more clearly than I wanted to. The night noises, Mom crying behind a locked door. I had knocked, and she'd told me to go to bed. The next morning, everything was fine again, or so I'd believed. Maybe this didn't start now. Maybe it had been festering for decades. I closed the album, bile rising in my throat. How long have I been blind to my own blood? I whispered. Still, I told myself to stay rational. No conclusions, not yet. Truth deserved evidence. But my heart was already sprinting ahead of logic. The following week, Velma changed. She locked her bedroom door in the middle of the day. Said she wasn't feeling well, but refused to see a doctor. When I offered to help clean, she snapped at me, sharp, cold, nothing like her usual tone. Later, I noticed a new perfume bottle on her dresser. Expensive. Not her kind of scent, something floral, youthful. I lifted it and stared at the reflection of my face in the glass. Was she trying to feel wanted again? Or trying to hide the smell of someone else? It's strange how sympathy can mix with disgust. I thought about how aging can twist people into shadows of themselves, clinging to moments of desire like their oxygen. But that didn't excuse it. The closer I looked at the people I loved, the less I recognized them. I wanted to talk to someone, anyone. So I left a voice message for my sister, Margie. Just small talk at first. But when it came to what mattered, my throat locked up. How do you even start a sentence like that? Hey, I think Mom and my husband. No. That night, I sat on the porch with the journal in my lap, flipping through the pages. My handwriting had started to look desperate, loops and slants like someone drowning. What if I was losing my mind? What if I misread it all? Maybe the video wasn't what I thought. Maybe fatigue and suspicion had poisoned me. A memory came back then, me in middle school, crying after a teacher accused me of cheating. Mom had shown up at the principal's office, fierce and loud, defending me until they apologized. I'd never forgotten it. Could that same woman, the one who protected me without hesitation, also be the one to betray me this way? At what age do you stop believing your mother's love is unconditional? By the end of the week, I barely spoke at all. The house turned cold, not in temperature but in spirit. Meals were short, conversations shorter. Jarrett's eyes avoided mine, Velma's stayed fixed on the floor. The camera I'd hidden sat quiet, catching nothing but shadows. And somehow, that silence terrified me more than anything else. I stopped sleeping. I'd sit up at night, staring at the screen, waiting for the smallest flicker of movement. Nothing. I used to fear what I didn't know. Now I fear what I already saw. One afternoon, I gathered laundry from the hamper, shirts, socks, jeans. Routine. Then, in Jarrett's pocket, something crinkled. I pulled out a small receipt. A hotel. Dated 3 nights ago. My hands went numb as I read the address. It wasn't far. In fact, it was barely 20 minutes away. The truth wasn't just close. It was right here. Morning came slow, the kind that felt like it didn't want to show up. I sat at the kitchen table staring at that hotel receipt I'd found the night before. The ink had smudged slightly from my fingers, but the name, the date, the room number, they were burned into my mind. My stomach was hollow, but my thoughts were sharp. Something in me had crossed over. There was no more pretending. I turned on my laptop to distract myself and opened my email. Buried between bills and newsletters was a forwarded file from the family lawyer, Reynard Estate Amendment 3. I clicked it without thinking. My name had been there once, under primary beneficiary. Now, it was gone. Replaced. The new signatories were my husband and my mother. My pulse quickened. I dug into old folders, searching through tax files and scanned records from years ago. Every document confirmed what this one screamed: I'd been erased quietly, over time. My signature was a decoration, my presence just a prop. I stared at the glowing screen, whispering, I've been living in someone else's script. Afternoon light spilled through the blinds, cutting the hallway in long shadows. I caught my reflection in the mirror, eyes tired but alert. I'd spent years being the peacemaker, the caretaker, the one smoothing over everyone else's chaos. No more. I whispered to myself, I'm done playing the supporting role. That evening, I went to help Velma with the preparations for her upcoming charity gala. The living room was filled with boxes of decorations and family portraits for the display wall. I was sorting frames when something stopped me cold. There, in a new photo taken just last month, stood my mother, my husband, and my brother, smiling together at a fundraiser. My spot, the place I'd always stood, was filled by someone else. I forced my face to stay neutral. Nice picture, I said, lightly. Velma didn't even glance at me. We had to fill the frame for the local paper, honey. You were busy that weekend. Busy. The word cut deep. I nodded, pretending to agree, but inside something twisted hard. I took out my phone, snapped a picture, and sent it to my friend Soline with one word: look. I watched my mother from across the room as she gave orders to the decorators, her voice calm, controlled. She looked proud, radiant even. The mask never slipped. My anger rose in my chest, steady and warm. But I didn't let it show. I knew better than to shout. Anger wastes energy. Information is power. Later that afternoon, I walked into the living room where Jarrett and Velma were talking quietly. Their laughter stopped the moment I entered. They both smiled, thin, polite, rehearsed. Everything okay? I asked. Of course, Jarrett said, too quick. Velma added, we were just finalizing a few details for the gala. You don't need to worry about it, sweetheart. I smiled back, sat down on the armchair across from them, pretending to read a magazine. I listened instead. They spoke in half-sentences, code words, the meeting, the timing, the documents. My chest tightened when Velma mentioned, 6 a.m. should work, right? What meeting? I asked, keeping my tone casual. Velma turned, her smile sugar-sweet. Nothing you need to worry about, dear. That smile was a mask, and I could finally see the cracks. I leaned back and nodded, memorizing every detail, the way Jarrett's leg bounced, how Velma avoided eye contact. Inside, I told myself, the one who watches never loses. That night, I made my first move. I called Jorah Cattle, our family lawyer. Jorah, I said quietly, could you send me the full copy of the Reynard Amendment? He hesitated, his tone cautious. Mrs. Stroud, I can only release the summary version. The rest will be reviewed at dinner. I thanked him, wrote his words down, and marked the time. Every little thing mattered now. After dinner, I called Claret, an old friend from high school who still lived nearby. I think something's off, I told her. I need another pair of eyes on the house. Just don't ask questions yet. She didn't. She just said, got it. That night, I went through my normal bedtime routine, moving slowly so no one would notice the difference. I tucked my phone under my pillow, set a small camera arm in the corner of the living room pointing toward Velma's hallway. My heart beat steady, not from fear this time, but from focus. As I checked the lens, I caught my reflection in the dark window, older, calmer, not broken, just sharper. I whispered, truth is the only solvent that dissolves deceit. The hallway outside my room looked peaceful, but it wasn't. It was a battlefield lined with carpets and family portraits. Every photo smiled down like a lie we'd all agreed to keep. I climbed into bed but didn't sleep. My phone buzzed once around midnight, an unknown number. The message read, 6 a.m. meeting confirmed. I stared at it, my mind spinning. I'd been dismissed from the morning's plans, but someone had forgotten to keep me off the loop. I turned off the lamp, lay still, and waited. Hours passed in slow motion. I almost drifted off when the screen of the home system flickered to life. A new notification appeared, small, almost hidden at the top corner. Scheduled access. Valora Stroud, room 302 to 2:13 a.m. My breath caught in my throat. 2:13, not 6. The meeting wasn't in the morning. It was right now. And whatever it was, I was the only one not invited. I sat up slowly, watching the time tick closer, the glow from the monitor lighting the room like a silent alarm. Tonight, the mask would slip. The next morning, I woke up before the sun had a chance to climb. I didn't even know if I had slept. My body had rested, sure, but my mind hadn't. It kept looping back to that one file, the hotel receipt. Still sitting in my inbox like a lit fuse. I got out of bed, padded into the kitchen, and opened the laptop again. The screen glowed harsh in the dark, and there it was. Harlan's name. The date, just 3 nights ago. Savannah. I opened a map and stared at the pin. 14 miles, 16 minutes without traffic. Not some business trip, not a mistake. That hotel wasn't even close to his usual meeting spots. I printed the receipt, folded it carefully, and tucked it behind the page in my journal marked, Timeline. Every note I'd taken the last few weeks now had a pulse. They weren't suspicions anymore, they were coordinates. Facts don't care about feelings, I murmured to myself, just to hear it aloud. I wrote it across the top of the page in bold ink. I wasn't ready to confront. Not yet, not when I was this close to seeing it all clearly. I had to prepare. That afternoon, I texted Claret. She responded quickly, we agreed to meet at the flower shop once it closed. Later that evening, the place smelled like lavender and old wood. She flipped the sign to, closed, and walked over, brushing potting soil from her apron. What's going on? She asked. I didn't answer right away. Just pulled out my phone and opened the photo of the receipt. Claret stared at it, then met my eyes. You know, not everything, I said. But enough to stop pretending. She looked down, her fingers fidgeting. Valora and Harlan, she began, then stopped. I overheard them 2 nights ago. They were talking about the early morning walkthrough, like it was some routine thing. Comfortable, laughing. My chest tightened. Walk through where? Your mom's room, she said. It sounded like they'd done it before. Claret's voice dropped. I didn't want to tell you. It felt like betrayal. But then I thought, what kind of friend stays silent while you get played like this? They're not even trying to hide it anymore, I whispered. She nodded. That's what scared me the most. Driving home, I didn't blast the radio or scream into the silence. I just drove, one hand steady on the wheel, the other clenched tight in my lap. The illusion I had clung to was gone. And the part that burned the most? I'd helped build it, brick by blind brick. The next few days, I dove into documents. Every email from the estate lawyer. Every line in the amendment. I compared Harlan's signatures across 3 years. Tracked changes in assets, shifts in accounts. Cross-referenced them with the hotel stays. Patterns emerged. I bought 2 small cameras. One tucked discreetly above the hallway sconce, the other hidden inside an old clock on my mother's dresser. I checked the feeds twice a day, made sure the batteries stayed full, and the SD cards stayed clear. At night, instead of curling up and pretending to rest, I practiced what I would say when the moment came. Looked at myself in the mirror and said, "You will not tremble." I studied Georgia law like it was scripture. Highlighted passages on property rights, digital recordings, and elder abuse. I didn't plan to yell. I planned to prove. One night at dinner, I tested the waters. Just a little. We were eating roast chicken. Valora poured the wine like she always did, smiling like she always did, too wide, too rehearsed. I was thinking, I said casually, slicing into my food. Maybe we should revisit the family foundation's bylaws. With everything coming up. Valora chuckled. "Darling, I hope you're not staying up plotting again. That brain of yours never rests." I looked up, my face calm. Just making sure I understand the timeline. Harlan's fork paused midair. There it was. The flicker behind their eyes. They knew I was onto them. And I wanted them to know that I wasn't afraid. They didn't argue, didn't deny. That told me more than anything they could have said. After dinner, I washed my plate, took my time wiping down the counter, and went upstairs. By 11:45, the hallway was still. I checked both camera feeds, clear. I brushed my teeth slowly, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened my journal. I didn't write. I just waited. At 2:03 a.m., I saw him. Harlan. Alone. No hesitation in his step. He walked down the hall like he'd done it 100 times. Reached Valora's door. I leaned closer. He pulled out a key. Not a knock. Not a whisper. A key. My hand hovered over the record button. I could feel my heart knocking against my ribs, steady but hard. The door opened. And I pressed record. The second I pressed record, my body went still. The kind of stillness you feel in the middle of a storm when you know the wind's about to change direction. I watched the feed as Harlan stepped into Valora's room. The timestamp on the footage, 2:13 a.m. The house was silent, but through the camera, faint voices slipped out like smoke under a closed door. Hers was shaky, hushed. His, measured, like someone managing a negotiation, not a conversation. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe deeply, just stared. If anyone had looked at me, they would have seen a woman watching her marriage collapse in real time, but what they wouldn't have seen was the calm building underneath. A new kind of strength. "This isn't a mistake," I whispered. "It's a choice. And now I have proof." I left my room barefoot. Quiet, steady, camera feed still live on my phone as backup. The hall creaked beneath my feet as I walked. No turning back. Their door was cracked open. I pushed it fully without knocking. They both snapped around. Valora wrapped her robe tight. Harlan froze like someone caught stealing. "Madeline," she started, her voice cracking. "It's not what it looks like," Harlan blurted, too fast. I looked straight at him. "Then tell me what I think it is." He stammered something about Valora having nightmares, needing company, not wanting to wake me. I waited. Valora didn't say a word. But what hit me wasn't guilt on her face, it was fear. Not the fear of being caught. A deeper fear, a kind I recognized from another life. I stepped back. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just left. And that silence? It hung heavier than any scream could. By the time the sun crept up, the kitchen felt colder than usual. The blinds let in slices of light that didn't warm anything. No one talked. I poured coffee. Harlan sat at the table, reading the paper like nothing had happened. Valora hovered, avoiding eye contact. I grabbed my bag, slid my laptop in, and zipped it closed like sealing a vault. I wasn't going to work. That didn't matter. The act was enough. Betrayal doesn't end when you catch someone. That's when it starts. It's what comes after, the part where you choose who you're going to be. Before I left the kitchen, I slid the footage to an encrypted drive. One copy stayed with me. One in the cloud. One sent to my sister across the state, who didn't even know why I'd sent it, yet. People think revenge looks like screaming or throwing plates. No, sometimes it looks like calmly finishing your coffee and walking out the door. That evening, I set the dinner table like usual. Forks straight, napkins folded. They came down just like any other night. But I saw the way Valora's hands shook slightly as she passed the salt. Harlan tried too hard to act relaxed. I kept my face unreadable. Halfway through the meal, I looked up and said, "Did either of you sleep well?" Valora almost dropped her glass. Harlan gave a short laugh that didn't reach his eyes. Silence followed. I let it stretch. Then I added, "Strange how quiet the house gets after 2 a.m. That landed. Harlan stood quickly, muttering something about a call. Valora didn't touch her food again. I cleaned up slowly, deliberately. Took in every twitch of discomfort, every half-swallowed word. Later, around 10, Valora knocked gently on my door. She looked smaller, eyes red, voice low. "I need to tell you something," she said. I didn't say yes. I just moved aside so she could walk in. "He's been threatening me," she whispered, tears slipping down her cheek. "You think I wanted this?" My head swam. I hadn't expected that. "Since when?" "Years," she whispered. "Before you even met him." I sat down. Suddenly everything cracked wide open. The truth wasn't a moment, it was a history. One I never asked to inherit. I pulled up to the venue in Savannah just before dusk. It was Valora's big night, her fundraiser, her name in lights, the kind of event that drew whispers and wine-sipping elites in silk and posture. I wasn't there to celebrate. I was there to watch. I'd barely stepped inside when I caught the program in my hand. There it was. Special thanks to Harlan Greaves for the anniversary necklace gifted to Valora Reynard. I read it twice, then a third time. The necklace was mine. I bought it, gift-wrapped it, handed it to Valora in her sitting room 6 months ago. I remembered her smile, the genuine warmth, the way she hugged me. That moment had meant something, to me. Now it was rewritten, reassigned, whitewashed. She didn't even blink when they read the note from the podium. No correction, no glance my way, just a gracious nod to the room, chin held high. I clenched the program but didn't tear it. Just slipped it in my bag like a receipt. You don't lose credit in public without gaining clarity in private. After the applause died down and the donors mingled, I stepped out the side entrance and walked 2 blocks to a small office where Jorah Cattle waited. The pretense was simple. He thought I had a question about a property clause. Instead, he slid a folder across his desk. "I think you ought to see this." Inside, stamped confidential, was a revised amendment to the Reynard Trust. My name was gone, erased like chalk after rain. My chest tightened, but not from shock. Clarity can feel like suffocation at first. This wasn't about the necklace. That was theater. This was the theft of legacy. Of voice. Of family memory itself. In the South, I murmured, inheritance isn't just money. It's how people say your name long after you're gone. I left without another word, driving home through peach-colored light cutting through the trees. Every mile back was a mile deeper into resolve. I wasn't going to beg for dignity. I was going to reclaim it. By nightfall, I was back at the house, sitting at the kitchen counter, laptop open, spreadsheets of receipts, dates, donations. Camera footage, names, patterns, movement. I called Claret. "We're not guessing anymore," I said. "It's time." We coordinated a quiet leak, trusted journalist, sealed copy of the original trust amendment, notarized backup. I submitted legal notice for review. This wasn't rage. This was math. Cold, deliberate, surgical. Before closing the laptop, I texted Harlan. "We talk tomorrow. No hiding behind Valora. Just you and me." The reply didn't come. Didn't matter. The next morning, I woke to a ping from a news alert. Local outlet. Breaking. Amendment to Reynard Trust disputed. Questions of forgery and fraud surface. I walked into the living room, coffee in hand. Valora sat stiffly on the couch. Harlan stood behind her, pale. They didn't say a word. I didn't raise my voice. I just sipped my coffee and said, "I hope you're both comfortable with how that reads." Valora blinked. Nothing more. Harlan tried to speak, stumbled. This isn't what it looks like, this is a misunderstanding. A clerical thing. I smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't warm a room, it chills it. The shift had happened. Not in the article. Not in the footage. In me. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was leading. Later that evening, as shadows stretched across the house, I sat alone in the study. I didn't need more confrontation. I needed understanding of what came next. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed. An encrypted message from an anonymous number. "We've got a meeting at 1 a.m. inside the estate's vault." My pulse quickened. That vault held more than documents. It held the history no one ever talks about. I didn't hesitate. Just whispered to myself as I stood up, "I'm heading into the lion's den, but I'm not bringing lunch." The ballroom in Savannah was polished like a stage set, glitter, crystal chandeliers, that signature southern air of polite deception. Velvet drapes. Laughter that didn't quite reach the eyes. Valora stood center stage, grace and lies wrapped in silk. I entered unnoticed and found my seat near the back. Coffee in hand, not champagne. Calm on the outside. Inside, a fuse waited for fire. At exactly 8:14 p.m., I tapped a small remote in my purse. A massive screen flickered to life. Footage played. Grainy but clear. The hallway camera. Harlan. The slow turn of Valora's bedroom door. The sound didn't need to be heard, the silence was loud enough. A gasp from the crowd. Forks paused mid-air. Wineglasses trembled. Valora froze mid-sentence, jaw tight. Harlan's smirk slid right off his face. I stayed seated, still, watching others watch. Exposure is the very thing that cleanses the wound. I remembered reading that years ago. Tonight, I understood it in my bones. The gala didn't recover. It fractured. Afterward, while most of the guests whispered in corners or rushed toward exits, I slipped away through a side corridor that led beneath the estate. Past the wine cellar, through the damp corridor, into the old vault. The lock was stiff but opened with the code Jorah gave me. Inside, dust, ledgers, filing cabinets older than some of our relatives, and secrets stacked like bricks. I opened the folder marked Confidential. Documents layered with dust and arrogance, amendments stripped of my name, reassignments signed by proxy, and one in particular. Designation, Delphina Reynard, removed. It wasn't business. It was burial. Pages told a quiet story. How they cut me out piece by piece, made gifts look like charity from Harlan, slid inheritance into corners I couldn't see. I didn't cry. I pulled out my phone, scanned every page, then backed it to the thumb drive I wore on a chain around my neck. This wasn't vengeance. This was reclamation. Back upstairs, the reception continued, thinner, colder. I walked up to the microphone. Nobody stopped me. I was the daughter, the wife, the keeper of this house, I said. Until I decided I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. I held up 2 images side by side on the projector. One from tonight's gala, a family photo with me conveniently cropped out. The second, the original trust document with my name in full. Then the next slide, the altered version, my name replaced, signature forged. The room quieted. Not even the servers moved. Valora opened her mouth but couldn't form words. Harlan stepped forward. We can explain." "No," I said, voice even. "You can't. You won't. And no one here believes it anyway." A few people stood. One began recording. "This house, this name, this legacy was never family-owned," I said, "if one person can erase another with a pen." There were no cheers, just silence, and then, finally, a ripple of cameras clicking. Eyes opening, minds shifting. I didn't feel triumph. I felt seen. Later, the house was too quiet. Valora shut herself away. Harlan vanished to some guest room or basement crawlspace. Who cared? I sat in the living room, drink untouched, the thumb drive on the table before me. Glowing faintly in the lamplight like a beacon or a warning. Justice has weight. It doesn't always feel like freedom. Sometimes it feels like a stone in your hand, warm from the fight, cold from what it cost. At 1 a.m., my phone lit up. Jorah's text, "We're reviewing the final document. Outside counsel's involved now." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The vault may have opened. But what came out of it still had to be faced. The morning after the gala, Savannah didn't wake up slow. It erupted. The footage, the documents, My voice on every screen in town. By sunrise, the local stations ran specials. National outlets picked it up by noon. I sat in my study, blinds drawn, sipping lukewarm coffee while headlines rolled across my screen. Reynard family secrets exposed at gala. Trust amendment sparks legal firestorm. Southern legacy, Northern tactics. Part of me felt not proud, but righted. Another part was knotted tight. Valora emailed. Subject line. Statement. The body? 3 lines of clean PR language. No apology, no remorse. Just formality. Harlan didn't bother pretending. No calls. No texts. Not even a denial. The board postponed everything. Then came the notice, my official role reinstated, title corrected. Victory felt quiet. But nothing comes without cost. Not in families like ours. Later that evening, I pulled an old photo out of the drawer, the one from the Foundation's 25th year celebration. I remembered standing just outside the frame that night. My hair was curled, dress pressed, but I wasn't invited to step in. I held the coats. Now, I held the microphone. I looked at the newer photo from after the confrontation, me dead center. Clear eyes, upright shoulders. Nobody cropped. That wasn't a gift, they didn't give me that spot. I took it. I called the estate PR lead and said, we're rewriting the narrative. We drafted a new statement, released a revised brochure, and updated the website. It now named my contributions, my leadership, and yes, my fight. I imagine someone sitting at home reading that press release. A daughter, maybe. A wife. A woman who thought she had to stay silent because no one told her she could speak. Let her see me. Let her know she's not invisible. I am no longer the woman hiding behind the family name. I am the reason it survived. I gave myself space after that. A long weekend off. Drove east until pine trees turned to salt air. Rented a quiet cabin by the coast, just me, the ocean, and the old leather journal I hadn't touched in months. I flipped through old entries. I keep waiting for someone to see me. Don't stir the water. They like it still. Is disappearing a kind of loyalty? That one gutted me. I cried. Finally. Not from pain, but from recognition. I'd let them define me by what I didn't say. Not anymore. Claret called. You okay? I'm bruised, I said, but not broken. She chuckled. That's better than we started. We talked long. About gardens. Books. Her brother's new knee surgery. Ordinary things. I needed that. When I returned to Savannah, I didn't head straight to the estate. I went to the Foundation headquarters. The next morning, I stood at the board table with a fresh binder and a simple proposal. We stop just preserving legacy. We start protecting people. I introduced new initiatives, transparency audits, educational outreach for adults navigating family wealth trauma, and mental health support. Things no one in our circle ever wanted to discuss. This isn't about money, I said. It's about dignity. I ended with a quote I'd scribbled down years ago. Legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you leave. Valora was there, in the back row. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. And for once, I didn't care. Her gaze didn't shape my value anymore. I walked out not taller, but lighter. Later that night, back at my desk, I found a folder placed neatly on top of my papers. No note. Just the title. Reynard Legacy, Global Archives. Inside, maps, property records, international holdings I didn't even know existed. And one post-it, handwritten. Your turn next. I leaned back in the chair, heart steady, mind awake. The storm had passed. But the road ahead had just begun.